la muerte. Aquí se queda la clara, la entrañable transparencia de tu querida presencia, comandante Che Guevara. Tu mano gloriosa y fuerte sobre la historia dispara cuando todo Santa Clara
My bad, I had us mute. Welcome back to Dare to Struggle, Dare to Win. Geechee, Yusef, Cherie. How y'all feeling?
You know, live, black. It's here.
Man, I'm feeling like a nerd, good brother. Yes.
Looking like a nerd, man. You look like a student, man. I mean, a professor.
Something like it, yeah. I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
That's all. He'd be all over the news and stuff.
Funny.
Yeah.
So listen, we got a treat for y'all today. Y'all welcome into Dare to Struggle, Dare to Win. And we have a continuation from last conversation, with Cherie doing a presentation. But before we get into that, we want to make sure you copy, paste, and comment and share with some folks that you want to invite to this conversation. Yeah, let's before we do that, didn't you have some check-ins, Cherie? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just thought we'd just check in, like what's been happening in everybody's life. I know we took a break last week. We able to kind of have a good collective meeting about some of the upcoming shows we got planned for y'all. So excited about that. But yeah, just wanted to kind of see what everybody's been getting into. I know I've been getting into, creating this presentation that, and the events that took place leading us here, But yeah, I mean, that's, kind of been last couple of days for me, and, still working, still, just processing and learning and creating in real time, and learning patience with myself. Thank you, Leah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Or Leah. I always say it's Leah. I don't know why I say Leah, but it's Leah, right?
Yes, Leah.
Yeah, Leah.
Kind of how Dr. Dennis was pronouncing your name.
We were straight there. He was like Jerry, and then I tried to give him the way I say it, like in pronunciation, where I put like Cherie, and then like it always does that autocorrect, and then I changed to a D, and then he started being like Shred, and I'm just like, oh gosh, I can't win.
Yeah, I was there for all the comment responses. That's what you have.
Yeah.
I ain't making no excuses, but when I look at your name and then I think about Dennis from Baltimore, there's a place called Cherry Hill, but they said Cherry Hill. So I wonder if he got so used to saying Cherry Hill that he could not even get the.
Yeah, because I hear that Baltimore, it was all in the Lee and the D of it, I'm like, oh my gosh, that little nasty accent. But all love. But yeah, I don't know if you want to talk about what you've been getting into, Geechee.
I just been we've been trying to get this curriculum done. The syllabus done for the summer program in Baltimore, and then getting some other things associated with that, and then really trying to find the next thing to get into. So I've been doing that most of the time. How about you, Yusef?
Man, just working, navigating that, starting preparing what I'm going to launching the Mama Cool Community House, our summer activities and things. And then personally, and this time of year, I'm gonna have to show y'all some pictures of my yard. My green thumbish, and getting my yard together.
No, there's a Cherie who be green thumbing over there. You doing it or Sherry doing it?
Well, Sherry set the groundwork for me. And I've been building off of it, over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why now it makes sense. That's why I used to be struggling my name sometimes. That's what like people know somebody named Sherry and then they meet me and they always be going back and forth mentally of like, which one is which? So now it makes sense. That be happening all the time.
And also I am terrible with pronunciation of names.
No, I mean, but my name is confusing because it's French, and so it is technically Cherie, but it's like we say it the American way, so it's like Cherie, but so it's like that weird, based on where you are. Because if I was, I guess, Haitian or born in France, I would probably say it differently than I do.
And every time I try to pronounce, I try to think about that Stevie Wonder song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was named after. That's one thing. People,
I didn't know that. See,
people always think I'm like Haitian because of my name, but my parents literally got it from the Stevie Wonder song because they like some Motown heads. So that's what that's where they got my name from. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm excited. All this work that you put into this piece and the conversation afterwards. So.
Yeah, I'm excited too. A little bit nervous, y'all. I've been working all day, and I didn't go to sleep last night, which was very bad of me. So I haven't even reviewed this since last night 6 a.m. or this morning 6 a.m. when I decided to go to sleep and then turn around and start doing calls for my job at 10 a.m. So, and I didn't even have coffee, but I think the energy of the revolution is keeping me alive. It's sustaining me. So. I'm just ready to get into it. But basically, I don't know how hip everybody is to I guess what's been happening. I don't want to go too deep into that, but a lot of conversations took place after the week before last week's episode. And within the comments on a clip that was posted as well. And then there was some back and forth between a friend of the I guess channel, Dr. Dennis and I. We had some back and forth that ended up being pretty cordial. Started off pretty, with the rah-rah, but I mean, yeah, God's not done working with me yet. My ancestors are still preparing me for what is to come. So I have my moments. But I think the nook of it is, like I said, there's a lot of misunderstanding of words. And that was, I guess, the root of the conversation that took place from the clip that was shared. Was we had this conversation about femicide, which I've always talked about in a particular context of race, gender, class, ever since I've heard the word and kind of had a consciousness of race, gender, class. I've been always talking about in that context. And with me, I'm somebody that's still getting used to always, having to have exact definitions, but I am understanding how important they are. Because with me, I'm the type of person, everything is feeling. And a lot of my life is speaking about words within context clues. And sometimes I don't always know what embodies a word or what is it typically associated with. So that was my struggle with femicide, where I was always talking about it within the context. And even with the previous episode, I still was talking about the word within the proper context, but I never knew what was included within the definition. Similar to words like racism, I don't always, know if because typically when I talk about racism, I'm talking about systems and things, but I don't know if that's the standalone definition of racism or if you have to add systemic racism. So that was kind of my confusion of it. But yeah, I got kind of brought into a bigger thing of definitions. So I took the time to kind of dialectically break down femicide, how it relates to a larger conversation we've been having on the platform. And I also took the challenge that because I think one of the heavy critiques of femicide is that it comes from feminism and from feminist thought. And there's always been, you know, critiques of feminism on the channel, which, you know, is valid with. And as somebody that considers themselves a radical Black feminist, I have always been very open and tried to very much attack those critiques of femicide. I mean, not femicide, feminism. So I won't so that, you know, we don't just, you know, be like get very dogmatic with specific frameworks. So I'm always trying to critique feminism as well. You know, as that is the yoke of Black feminists, like scholarship for the most part. So so with that, I decided I was also challenged to come up with my own framework, because that's another thing that's emphasized so much within the community of Black women, coming up with new frameworks, people being like, feminism is tired, even if you throw radical Black feminism on top of it, like, can you come up with a new framework? And for me, so for me, I did challenge myself by doing this. And I guess I'll kind of get more into the descriptor of everything once I go into it. But that was just kind of a little preview of what I wanted to get into. But before we start, I guess through all of these conversations.
Can I add something real quick for you?
Mm-hmm.
Can you just slow down a little bit? Just breathe.
Okay. Yeah, got you. Sorry, I am nervous, guys. So my bad. Thank you.
Take your time. Take your time.
Okay. Yeah, it's so much to get into it. I just want to make sure I don't miss anything. But okay, so let's slow it down. And before I get into my presentation, I want Geechee and Yusef to have a chance to talk about like two questions before I go into it, or two trains of thought they want the chat and the audience to think about as I go through this.
You got yours ready, Geechee? Start me the alley hoop. I mean, I think for particular Black men, you know, anytime we're talking about the relationship between Black women and Black men, and centering feminism, whether you agree with it, disagree with it, to challenge yourself to sit with it, not the ideology, the conversation about what was being said and what's being heard, and to explore before you react. So, and then with Black women, to engage yourself beyond the what you're hearing as well. I mean, even speaking broadly from your perspective or your lived experience, ultimately the show is about dialectical. So dialectically, where do we meet in the middle? Ultimately, for me, the framework is about Black liberation and how we move out of our oppression. So it's more of a framework than a question.
Sure.
For me, I want to give Cherie a shout out for agitating the environment to dig and be more, I guess dialectical around topics that most of us say we have politic about, but we don't become eager at participating in the public dialogue of those things. Like, and so thank you for making sure that this space have those conversations. I think it has created a ripple, and a good ripple. Like we've all had conversation. We had the meeting, you know, me and Lorik talk, and then I'm having a conversation with multiple people about like the dynamics in general. And yeah, like, so I encourage people to just be open. There's always a way and a reason to critique, and there's sometimes you could be more curious, and I plan to be more curious, but I also I just think we should be open as we engage in this conversation and realize that I think we're in a room among people that are all trying to get to the same place. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to your conversation.
Okay, guys. So I'm gonna start. I just want to tell the chat I'm not gonna be looking at your comments because I be sucking at looking at the comments, and this is just gonna be too much. I'm gonna be looking at my notes and trying to stay focused. Geechee and Yusef will be able to be involved in the comments, and you know, hopefully after we can bring up anything that like stood out in the comments and and whatnot. But I'm going to do my best to not try to look at the comments. And I will be turning to the next page. If anything crazy happens, like all of a sudden I have lipstick on my teeth, just yell stop, and because I'm not looking at myself. So, you know, I trust that y'all let me know if something weird happened. If a lot gets out of line, just let me know. Okay. So, yeah, the Dialectics of Black Struggle is the name of the episode. We're starting with the circle back to femicide. So that's why I named it that, I guess. Okay. So I guess for me, I wanted to ground this conversation as well as I'm grounding the ideology that I guess I'm developing for myself, and others can kind of over time, I guess, fill in for me. Developing an ideology called Bambaraism from Tony K. Bambara, who we did a special episode on about a month and some change ago, I want to say, where we had a granddaughter on. And to me, this excerpt from an article that was in her book, The Black Woman, that she published, that had several articles and poems and short stories from Black women issued in 1970. She wrote an article called The Issue of Roles, where she talked about Black men and Black women doing the work and collective work to, you know, kind of, for lack of a better word, I know we get tired of hearing it, but like revolutionary change the way we look at gender and roles, and as far as you know, within the Black community. So like within this and specifically within doing, you know, struggle for liberation. So this is the article, the clip from the article that I want to share. She said, "Keep the big guns on the real enemy. Men have got to develop some heart and some sound analysis to realize that when sisters get passionate about themselves and their direction, it does not mean they're readying up to kick men's ass. They're readying up for honesty. And women have got to develop some heart and sound analysis so they can resist the temptation of buying peace with their men with self-sacrifice and posturing. The job then regarding roles is to submerge all breezy definitions of manhood, womanhood, or reject them out of hand if you're not squeamish about being called a neuter, until realistic definitions emerge through commitment to Blackhood." And when I say Blackhood, I think she was more so just talking about a sense of being Black. And a lot of us, you know, on this channel associate that with being African people of the diaspora, Pan-African, you know, so just Blackhood in general is kind of like, you know, it's coming from whatever scope you're coming from. If you're Pan-African, New African, a Black nationalist, is coming from whatever scope, but just saying that in order to get to any of those things, like this work has to be done. And I think that's the point, or the emphasis of what I'm making. It's never been to have a gender war. A lot of the principles that I was attempting to get out last episode was to kind of, how can we center this conversation where both Black men and Black women are talking about creating a collective culture towards redefining these things. And it's not to say get rid of, you know, man or and we all just come man or woman or become all genderless or something. I mean, that, you know, that's a, you know, a personal choice, but it's saying the breezy definitions, like more fluidity, because that's what we had, you know, before all of these systems, before we got these rigid definitions of a man's role and a woman's role, to just become more fluid. But I'll go back to this in my next slide where I get deeper into it. So I was challenged to come up with my own framework. And if I was to do that as a Black woman, I would call it Bambaraism. And to me, Bambaraism is a framework that is a commitment to Black unity, that addresses triple oppression that Black women experience through race, class, and gender simultaneously. It centers Black women's struggles, both systemic and interpersonal, while aiming to unite Black men and women culturally to demolish the dominant political system of white hegemonic, imperialist, capitalist, colonial patriarchy. Yeah, and so like it's theoretical, it's colonial. I mean, it's cultural, it's anti-colonial. It's all of these things, and it's just like a push to move away from like reactionary gender roles to like understanding that this is the work that we both should be doing. To me, it pulls a lot from what and I haven't read a lot of Claudia Jones, but from a lot of what I see, her theory, she never identified as feminist or any, and a lot of people always bring that up, but she recognized triple oppression. She was able to see these things and her womanhood and the racism and the classism at the same time without having to put one on the back burner. She was able to constantly antagonize these things, and she had a dedication to culture as well that I also think is important, because Toni K. Bambara was a cultural worker. So there's this element of like, no, we don't have control over these large dominant systems, but we do have immediate control over the culture we create amongst our families, amongst our organizations, amongst our household, amongst our friendship circles. We do have some level of responsibility of the culture we create around those things. And yeah, it also pulls from radical Black feminism and African womanism, because for me, I feel like you can have those two identities. I think you can identify with a lot of Black radical feminist thought and African womanism, and it doesn't have to be like these two separate things. And I'll kind of break down how they can support each other as I go on. Before we get deeper into the conversation, I did want to just go over these definitions. I'm not going to read necessarily all of each one out loud, because it's probably going to take too long. So I'll just try to bullet point. But like, these are not like dictionary definitions. I like pulled from like, just a lot of theories that we talk about within the Black radical tradition. Patriarchy is not simply men in charge. It is a system that operates simultaneously with race and class, cannot be fought on a gender alone analysis. Misogyny is the structural enforcement of patriarchy, not personal hatred, but a political technology that disciplines women who resist. Misogynoir is not racism plus sexism, but is distinct fused form of oppression specific to Black women. Black radical feminism insists that Black women's liberation is not a subset of liberation. It is a prerequisite of all liberation. And Africana womanism and African womanism are distinct frameworks. And that's something that I think a lot of people miss. And I was challenged to look deeper into both. So I took that challenge. Both, I think, have a level of importance, but I prefer one over the other. And we'll work through these as I go on. But so I'll probably just wait to like dive deeper into that. But I'm just kind of like talking about those things beforehand. And then anti-Black racism, because that word comes up a lot. Before I get into any of that, I wanted to like define Black femicide in full, give it like more dialectical thought, since like I said, I was just ready to have the conversation about the specific events that were happening. But I'm now going back to get like clear on the definitions, because I think the lack of clarity on the definitions is like one of the hugest gaps that's like causing so much tension within these conversations between Black men and women. So femicide is the gender-based murder of women or girls, typically defined as the intentional killing of females by males because they are female. That's how it's typically defined. But it is the gender-based murder of women and girls. So that is, that's different. But I know how it's typically defined, and even how I defined it, because like I said, I was in rush to get to the larger conversation. But it's a gender-based murder of men of women and girls. And Black femicide is not simply femicide that happens to Black victims. It is like a distinct phenomenon shaped by the compounding effects of race and gender oppression simultaneously. And so I'm saying this to say that a lot of the things that we think are so separate from femicide as far as causes for why Black women may be getting murdered and killed still fall under the thought of Black femicide. I think we have a limited and obviously not unclear understanding of what those things are. And so we think that we go and rush and say, well, what about this and what about that, without realizing it falls under the definition of Black femicide. So Black femicide refers to the gender-based killing of women and girls where racial identity shapes their vulnerability to violence. their invisibility in data and media, and the institutional failures that allow perpetrators to go unchecked. So it comes from intimate partner violence, state violence is a part of it, missing and murdered, the fact that Black women and girls go missing at alarming rates and get less media attention. That is a systemic structural thing that falls under the conversation and dialogue of Black femicide as well. Just the lack of media attention, because even that is like a motivator, and like people understanding that you can kill Black women and it won't get most of the time it won't get a lot of attention, and people won't look for these women if you kidnap them or something. And then serial predation, where even serial killers specifically target Black women, like a similar thing, because they feel like it's going to be less consequences. Structural impunity, like it's also sustained by the failures of the police system, which we, as a lot of us that identify to some degree as a prison abolitionists, or people that want a liberatory framework from like the prison industrial, a liberation from the prison industrial complex. We understand that even those can harm Black lives, especially Black women's life, because of just like, the limited resources, the criminal system that constantly just undervalues Black life. When Black women need help, sometimes that very system that they may be going to ends up harming them in the end. So all of these things can tie under Black femicide. Black femicide by the numbers, and I have kind of the references of where I'm getting the numbers from. Black women are 6 times more likely to be murdered than Black women. This was, a quote that somebody came to in 2024 based on collective data leading up to 2023, between I think 1999 to 2023. And then 44% of Black femicide or Black is done through gun, basically. Like there's been a 40% rise of gun homicide towards Black women between 2019 and 2023. So we're talking about 4 years where it's risen because of the gun laws. And most femicides are done by gun. That's where I get to this 74.7% of Black women killed by Black men in 2023 were killed by a firearm. So it's like a very specific type of killing too. And I could go on about some of the other numbers, but this is here to kind of look at. I don't want to stay on it too long. And then there's one more thing that I wanted to say about the stats is that pregnant Black women are 11 times more likely to be victims of femicide than non-pregnant Black women, which also makes you think of like, it was mentioned in a critique, about femicide, about like, well, what about the kids, or what is a specific framework for the kids? But like I said, as I tried to connect last episode, like the harm of femicide impacts, children too, and even children unborn, because of all the systematic harm that I think we face in this country and worldwide, because of particular things, they can lead to Black women being pregnant and being like, more likely targets, just because of like, you think of there's definitely a strong, I feel like, class part of that, of like affiliated with that as well. When you think about Black life and the fear of Black life being brought into this world, and responsibilities and not having resources, like all of those things, tie into that. One of the biggest things that I wanted to clarify that was widely and is widely misunderstood when we talk about femicide is neither gender-based or gender-motivated. Is rooted in personal intention. Because a major critique that I have continued to hear was, how do we calculate femicide? How do we prove it? How do we know these men are saying, I just want to kill women, specifically Black women, because they are Black women? And what we are missing is that gender motivation and gender-based neither has to do with the person saying, I'm doing this because of their gender. It's the concept of structural behavioral of the structural behavior encompassing a range of mechanisms through male dominance that is enforced through violence against women. So to prove femicide, no, you don't need to get in a person's head and ask them why they did it. It is structural. It's all these things that we know are tied to patriarchy, entitlement, punishment, cohesive control, honor and hatred. All of these things, whether you want to say gender motivated or gender based, I was going to say, because I think I even have at the bottom of here that gender based, or maybe I changed that. So sorry about that. Let me go back. But yeah, gender based is the word, because gender based is more broad than gender motive, but neither, even if you use gender motive, it still doesn't mean a person's personal intention or that that's what that person was thinking when they did it. So the way that we prove femicide is a prior history of abuse, a pattern of cohesive control, communications, text, voicemails, emails, social media, witnessing testimony, the relationships that the people that were close to them, the things that they witnessed around them, forensic evidence, signs of overkill, specific body parts targeted, rape being a part or associated with the killing as well. And then the context of separation. Like, that's one of the biggest things that stands out to me is 77% of femicide victims in total are killed after leaving the home or breaking up with a man. So it's like a specific sort of punishment. Like even if a person is finally deciding to get out of a situation that is harmful, they're not given that chance, unfortunately. And then there's a challenge with that, with how I described it. There is a challenge in proving it. Many jurisdictions lack femicide as a distinct criminal charge. The proving motive is harder than proving action. So this is something that women that care about femicide have to go through, even when trying to classify something as femicide. There's all of these things that they're up against because the system doesn't recognize it as it doesn't recognize it as a specific thing for women. It doesn't recognize a specific thing for Black women, especially. And then, like if you want to count in wars and stranger femicide, like all of these other things, people, typically classify those as something else, even though they could still be affiliated with femicide. And so, that's what hurt me the most about a response that I got from Dr. Dennis was that the saying that it was overused, when the saddest part about feminism is that it's wildly underreported. Because it's not necessarily these systems that are classifying, it's organizations, and I'm sure somewhere between liberal and radical organizers that care about femicide, are taking the time to go through the files, but, there's nothing structurally that is categorizing it. So the numbers that we get are likely less than the accurate numbers, than higher than the accurate numbers. But the last time that it was accounted for in total was 2023, just because it's so hard. They don't have the numbers for 2024, 2025. They don't have those numbers just because it is hard to classify because of misclassification at the point of record, institutional indifference and premature closure. The case closes, the stuff is classified and people can't get access to. Structural invisibility of the most marginalized, especially when it comes to even like indigenous femicide, to indigenous women. There's a lot of just like structural things about just the fact of that Black women and brown women, all of that, where people care less or gets less attention when something happens to us. So it's, like I said, there's so many things a person has to overcome to even be able to classify something as femicide. And then community suppression. Sometimes to avoid stigma or to hide certain things, like a lot of these cases are suppressed. So because of the absence of data, and because you have to look in the data and be able to prove the things that I said before, prior case of abuse, all of these things, pattern of cohesive control. So it's widely underreported. Another thing that I wanted to address was the bidirectional harm issue. bidirectional violence and Black femicide. To me, it's a critical distinction. I can say that bidirectional violence and femicide definitely probably come from the same structural, institutional things that we experience as Black people, but to combine them within the same category does a huge disservice to Black women, to me, because it's like when you bring up femicide, the numbers, and I put it right here because it's typically brought up, and what was brought up against me when I was talking about this was, 45% of Black men have stated that they've been hit by women in domestic violence, and Black women have the same numbers, so it's just both of us. And I just think that is, just like I said, it's widely irresponsible to say, because we know already with femicide, I'll say this quote once again, 77% of femicide victims are killed after leaving the home. And then I can go back to the other number, but it's like about 90% of femicide victims are done through gun violence. So these are not scenarios where two individuals are fighting and somebody, probably the male, is like, I need to protect myself, and now somebody ends up dead. Like, this isn't a back and forth thing. This is either somebody leaving the house and somebody's coming after them, and then however it's done, somebody is also getting a gun and, creating the act. So it's not like we're just hitting each other and then femicide happens. Because overall, bidirectional violence describes a pattern of mutual conflict within a relationship. Femicide describes an outcome, a killing, and basically most people that are in bidirectional relationships, most of those relationships do not end in femicide. And somebody like a Dr. Dennis knows this, because in most of those situations where the violence is, for whatever reason, mutual, most of the time those couples either, do separate over time, or they go to somebody and get help. Like, the conclusion doesn't usually become like the woman is dead in the end. Femicide emerges from cohesive control dynamics where one person dominates. Particularly the man, which ties back to patriarchy. So that is what I mean, where there's two different things. If you're able to gather evidence and of control dynamics where it is that one person, then it's not the same thing as bidirectional harm, where like both people are just hurting each other. And it becomes victim blaming, or misidentifying a Black woman as the primary aggressor. And that is something in our culture that we have to actively stand against, I believe, do the work to unpack. A lot of the times, because of misogynoir, Black women are arrested when they defend themselves against their abuser. We're not typically seen as victims. So we get higher numbers of Black women getting arrested for defending themselves against their abuser. The numbers are higher when it comes to Black women. Black women are also higher in numbers when it comes to killing their abusive husbands. A lot of studies have shown that, like, we, more than any other group of women, do take matters into our own hands after dealing with systems of abuse from one person. And I mean, it makes a lot of sense when you think about it dialectically, because if you do something and you're in a thing with your guy or whatever, they can also look at you as somebody that's violent too, or the same harm that we always talk about, where Black women are very much afraid that their abuser could get hurt by the police, or that the police will unjustly kill their partner. So instead of going to these systems, because we know these systems do not work in our benefit or protect us or help us, we take it into our own hands. So Black women are, more than any other group, likely to defend themselves or take it upon themselves to defend themselves. And I think even understanding these things, I feel like it should to me give you a greater passion for calling for like that sort of community control thing within the community, where we are able to have people that we can turn to when we're in these situations, as opposed to feeling like we're alone and having only one way out, where we have 93% of women are convicted for killing who are convicted for killing an intimate partner had been abused by the same person. The majority of Black women incarcerated for killing someone close to them were defending themselves against sustained abuse. So I just feel like these equal DV arguments pull away so much of like the levels of harm that Black women experience. And it's not to say that bidirectional violence isn't a thing and it doesn't happen, but I just think that it's with the way it's brought up whenever Black femicide is spoken about is just largely disrespectful to what Black women have to go through. Yeah, and so I'm just circling back to the fact that Black femicide does, if we're going to talk about it, we're going to talk about it, for me, from a radical perspective, it does incorporate all these things: patriarchy, class, imperialism, all the things that I've talked about. I've been talking about the class and its impact. I didn't get too much in the global impact, but I mean, you know, femicide is a global issue. I mean, you know, and even when it comes to these other countries, we're able to get better numbers in America, but the numbers globally, and I mean the USA, but the numbers globally are very hard to prove just because of, like, you know, the way the gender issues that impact Black women internationally, you know, are just, when you think of war, when you think of like specific gender-based harm and of killings and mass rapes and all of those and assaults, like it's just, you know, and it's going to go unpunished, you know, if it's through some sort of military action. So, you know, like I said, so it's once again very much like underreported, but it's to say that, like, you know, I think, like I said, the thing, or one of the criticisms of Black femicide was, oh, it could be so many other things, because people are solely looking at it verbatim as it could mean so many other things other than a person intentionally wanting to kill a woman, or it could mean so many other things when we're talking about Black femicide, other than a person wanting to intentionally kill a Black woman. But that is the framework that Black femicide is. That is the conversation that Black femicide is happening. Now, I understand that people can be reactionary and it can come in and turn into a blame Black men, and Black men just need to do better. And I feel like, let me slow down. I feel like that was one of the main reasons why I wanted to do last episode, is because I felt like a lot of the push online was pushing us towards that of like, oh, it's just Black guys' fault. Black men take accountability. It's you, removing it from all these wider structures. So yeah, so that's what I'm trying to say here, is that the Black femicide does incorporate all these things if we talk about it dialectically. But I feel like the pushback of, why is it femicide? How do you prove it? And it's something else, rather than understanding how it connects to all these things, is what makes us is what makes it a gender war, you know, when it doesn't have to be. Let me say, okay. And then another thing I wanted to go back to that is always, I guess, kind of pushed back against when we talk about Black men, patriarchy. And I felt like I really tried to find like the better words. And shout out to Saturdays with Renee. I watched last episode and about dialectical materialism, and it definitely helped me. I'm no dialectical materialism scholar, but I feel like having this framing definitely helped me think about, like, how can I explain or talk about Black men and patriarchy with talking about both sides of it, and how you can benefit from a system that is intentionally harming you. And I feel like the framework that was laid out in the last episode, Lord, I'm blanking on his name, by our Asian brother. Shout out to him. Sorry, I'll be forgetting names, but he's a great spirit, great energy. But the core contradiction that we're seeing is basically, you have your antagonistic contradiction, and then you have your non-antagonistic contradiction. Like I said, I don't want to read everything on the page, but the antagonistic contradiction is white supremacist patriarchy was constructed in direct opposition to Black male autonomy. Their marginalization is a feature, not a bug. The system does not intend to power Black men. That's something that we can agree on. The non-antagonistic contradiction is that within Black communities, Black men do extract conditional patriarchal benefits. So I'm saying it's a conditional benefit, and that it is a non-antagonistic contradiction to the the larger contradiction, but they're both, you know, are connected. And so, yeah, so basically, and when I say these conditional patriarchal benefits, domestic labor being disproportionately being absorbed by Black women, and we see that sometimes within churches, sometimes within our organizations. We talked about it historically within the Black Panthers, the social difference between Black male leadership, even when women are doing a lot of organizing work. And like I said, I messed up with this. I feel like I spelled that. I can't go back and change it. It's okay. Sorry, my bad, y'all. But I meant to say SNCC, Black Panthers, churches, grassroots org, and grassroots orgs today. Being centered as like the default victim of anti-Blackness. We talked about like how we had the Black Lives Matter movement, then we started to say her name movement because Black women were being killed by the police as well. But there was a centering of Black men, which, you know, there's no shame in, but because of these kind of like conditional, I guess, benefits, like I said, there's like a centering of like maleness because it's looked at as like male is the head and the leader of the community. And, you know, all of that comes from patriarchal thought. And also I'm drawing blank, and I'm gonna come back to Yusef about this because he said it. He brought up, when I was on the phone, me and Yusef had a conversation earlier this week or last week where we were talking about Ida B. Wells. And he also brought up a situation where her work wasn't centered, but Black men's were. Or I'm probably getting it wrong, but I would like to go back to Yusef for that story. But I thought of that as well. But yeah, so it's a sequency trap. Many Black nationalist formations use the primacy of racial oppression to indefinitely defer addressing gender and sexuality. Basically, it's like a logic of we can't fight each other right now. The real enemy is outside. And that's why I like Tony K. Bambara's conclusion of, yes, eye on the enemy, but this is what we've got to do internally amongst ourselves, or else, you know, all of, you know, our movements will suffer. And we have seen that our movements do suffer when we don't interrogate patriarchal behavior. And it's not just patriarchal behavior of men over women. Even that can be seen within the structure of these organizations about who has the money, who's considered the leader, who has like this dominant sort of patriarchal power, and the amount of things that they're able to extract and ways they're able to manipulate people in the group. It all comes from a patriarchal framing. And even though that, you know, Black leader within your org, within your grassroots org may not be the white man and benefiting from patriarchy at that mass, because we know at any given moment the white man can take the organization away, take the money away. So we know that the larger thing is a white supremacist patriarchy. But within the framing within our organizations, if we have male leadership, they can still fall into a conditional benefit of patriarchy that has to be pushed back on. But yeah, so both things are simultaneously true. Black men are victims of a system that uses patriarchy as a racial weapon against them, and they are agents who produce. I wouldn't say agents. I feel like I shouldn't took the agents part out because that's too much. I think that even agents is a bit heavy, but they can reproduce. The part that I was trying to get is they can reproduce patriarchal harm within their community. So neither side cancels out each other. The scale of analysis determines which aspect is dominant in any given moment. So yeah, and then, I'm still understanding how to talk about dialectics, but like I said, somebody was talking about being hungry and then trying to in the episode of Saturdays of Rave, you're hungry, but then you're trying to go to a organizing event or something where it's the main thing that needs to get done is this sort of, urgent sort of thing that you need to get done for the community. But the second non-antagonistic contradiction is you're hungry. And it's you're not going to be able to be present and fight the things that you need to fight if you're starving and you can't actively be involved in the thing that you're going to. And like I said, I'm paraphrasing the example that was given, but it was so I think it's a similar mirror of what I'm talking about within the Black community, where we have to be able to name these things and have an understanding that two things can be true. Then that doesn't, that doesn't take away from the larger system, but we're going to be starving if we don't address the non-antagonistic thing. So yeah. I'm gonna take a quick sip. I promise y'all it's only like 10 more minutes. I'm like wrapping up, but sorry, y'all. I know I've been going.
Take your time. You're doing well. Thank you.
I know there's a lot of different feminisms, womanisms, but like I said, my focus on here, I just wanted to focus on the main three, and I think it's getting dark, y'all. Let me actually try to turn on this light really quick. I'm sorry. I hope because I don't want to go dark or I have a light. Sorry, 1 second, guys.
You're cooking. Everybody say you're doing good in the chat. I say you're doing good.
Okay.
Professor Yusef over there twirling his hands with a thumbs up, you know.
Okay, sorry guys. Let me just turn this little light on just because I don't want it to I just want y'all to be able to really see me, even though I can't see me really.
We can see, I'm telling you, you're good.
Okay. All right, and then I want to be able to see for myself too. So yeah. All right. So the main feminisms that I wanted to kind of, or women frameworks for Black women, was Black radical feminism, Africana womanism, and African womanism. And I know there's others, but I just wanted to focus in on these three because those were what were constantly brought up when, because like I said, the biggest critique of femicide is that it falls under feminist thought, whether it's radical Black feminist thought, liberal feminist thought. That's the critique. And so then because there's a critique of radical Black feminism in general, then like I said, the whole idea of even having a framework of femicide is then kind of pushed back on entirely. And then it says we need to come up with our other things. So like I said, I looked at these two concepts that were supposed, that were original, came out of, frameworks that were rooted more in our African roots. And so I looked into both of these things, and I've heard of these things. Africana womanism is something that I heard about a while ago. When I first read an article about it on Hood Communist, I knew it wasn't for me. But no shade to the woman that created this, Clenora Hudson Wells. No shade to her. Shout out to her. We all got to put our best effort forward, but I just have a lot of critiques of it. I think one of the biggest things is it is a rejection of feminism. It's a historical argument that mainstream feminist movements are actively exclude and betrayed Black women and stuff like that, and are tainted at the root. And the interesting part is that's something that Black radical feminists have also continuously critiqued and stated in their argument as well. But the primary argument of Africana womanism is that African people globally, racial domination is the essential threat. Gender struggle within the community. And I'm not saying that this is something she said verbatim, but I feel like the context in which it's explored, these are my conclusions, is that it's viewed, to me, the framework makes it seem as if gender struggle within the community is a distraction. It goes to this idea of who were we before feminism, who are we in Africa, but it does not have any frameworks that address 400 years of slavery and hundreds of years of white hegemonic patriarchal indoctrination. It just doesn't, have those frames of process to me to actually address these issues. There's other stuff. Like I said, I feel like there's an illusion that we shouldn't publicly air our grievances. I feel like in a lot of this, and this is just what I see looking at it, and and other women who have critiqued the framework. It has 18 characteristics. All of these are characteristics of the women. There's no characteristics for what men should be doing under Africana womanism. That's why, so that's another issue that I have with it. But these characteristics include self-namer, family-centered, strong, in concert with male counterpart, which once again, I feel like if the male counterpart is also a victim of, hundreds of years of indoctrination, like how are you in concert with that? Like, how do you unpack it? The goal is to just be in concert with the male counterpart, and there's no sort of principle that the men need to uphold in order for that to happen. So, but yeah, mothering is a part of it, but it doesn't really go even mothering and nurturing and all of this domestic labor and of the mothering, the cooking, the nurturing. It's all ties back into kind of like a gender construct of like, it's kind of, and that's fine. I'm not saying that women can't have these aspects. I have, nurturing aspects. I be cooking sometimes. Like, I'm not saying, don't do that. But to me, I just feel like when you, it goes back to the Tony Cake Bambara, quote that I mentioned earlier for my framework on Bambaraism, is that it's the rigidness. It's like, it then kind of goes back to this rigid framing, and it doesn't really think about the diversity that we had in Africa of what a woman looks like before colonialism. It still is talking about a specific type of woman pre-colonialism. And yeah, I don't think it centers Black women, because I just feel like if you don't have an also equal accountability or framework or anything for the male side to consider, and it's all about the things that women should be called to do, I just don't look at it as something that is liberatory for Black women, and I don't look at it as something that talks about our specific interests. Getting to the larger issue, the larger goal of cultural unity. So yeah, it's kind of race first politics, which I get why a lot of people that are more on the cultural nationalist side would identify with it, because it's a lot of, kind of race first. And yeah, and like I said, and then there's also an erasure of queer women. I don't want to repeat certain things, but yeah, to me, I feel like it's built around Black male political comfort. And I think that's why, a lot of men will jump to Africana womanism the second they hear about it, because it's a very it's a comfort thing. It's like, oh, my woman's supposed to be like, in conversation and in sync with me. And I'm not saying that can't be a final result, but it's like, how do we get there? So it's like when you jump to Africana womanism and you ignore the years of indoctrination we've received as a people, the indoctrination, abuse, everything, I just think it doesn't set up, a sort of framework to get to that place, if that's where you want to go. So that's my issue with it. I was also called to look into Na Dove's contribution of African womanism. And I honestly, I like African womanism. And I mean, I know it was also brought from Na as like a substitute for Black feminism or radical Black feminism. But to me, I think they can work simultaneously. I know that's not, the ethics of the person that might have created the thought, but I think they can work simultaneously. Some of the things that I like about it is that, it does dive into Kemetic principle. It talks about balance. And it grounds into like a lot of the cosmetology, which is, a lot of, it's spiritual woo-woo, but I think, it still is cool. I like the stuff. I got my crystal right here. So I was like, okay, we want to look at it from a spiritual perspective and a political perspective and tie it and see how it can connect to African spirituality, the political perspective. I think that that's pretty cool because it ties into culture. I think that's another thing I appreciate is that she did talk about creating an actual culture that isn't the same, dominant white hegemonic supremacy that we've been indoctrinated with. So like I said, so it expands upon what Hudson Wells laid out. It gives a little bit more context. It does call upon, I think, because one thing that I will say when I was reading on it, and no, I didn't have the time to read any of her like individual books, but, I just kind of quickly researched. And then I also watched 2 lectures that Na Dove did about this. One thing I'll say I caught in the lectures that I think I wish there was, because I don't even know if people that say this even understand that this is something that she emphasizes in her lectures. But she centers mother and nurturing and womanhood, but she doesn't say that it's gender specific. And she doesn't say, but Ma'at doesn't necessarily have like a, because they were saying, it says right here, it's like, it's still not really a place for queer women because it still is talking about Black men and women balancing with each other. But what I will give her credit for is that she said the nurturing nature, the nurturing mothering is not just a thing from women who have children, that every woman in the community is a mother or holds some sort of responsibility of care and nurturing for the community, for the people. But she also said men. She said in I promise you, she said in a I'm saying interview, but in a speech in a lecture that she did, she said men can also invoke this nurturing mother spirit, that when you center that, you have it as a man too. And that is something that I feel like, people miss when it comes to like Ma'at and like getting back into African spiritual systems. So I thought that was pretty cool. But like I said, I still think this, without actual frameworks of radical Black feminism, still kind of, it's more of a deadline than it is a transitional, I feel like, ideology. So that's why I still couldn't just be like, I'm solely an African womanist, because I've seen firsthand. I was a hotep for years. I've seen so many people talking about they want to practice Ma'at, and that wearing they unks while beating women's ass. So, and I know I'm talking about personal experience, but I just think we can do our best to get to these things and say we're balancing and we're Ma'at and the Ankh is life and that's what we're supposed to be a reflection of and all that beautiful stuff. But how do you get to the harmony? How do you get to the justice? How do you get to the truth and the order without any framework? And it's just like, go back to this pre-colonial thing. So that's, my struggle with it. And so, so that's why I circle back to, my theory of Bambaraism, where I think you can, it can be a collaboration of radical Black feminist thought and just radical Black women thought, period. Because like I said, a lot of people like to emphasize that certain women that are classified as Black feminists didn't necessarily call themselves that. And I'm not even entirely sure if Toni Cade Bambara referred to herself as a feminist or not. I think a lot of her work falls under that category. But to me, I think, like I said, people still get so caught up in the names, and to me, it's like it's the subject that we're avoiding. And I think we have to be honest with that. Like a lot of the framing, whether it's femicide, a lot of these things, even the things that I'm laying out when I talk about Bambaraism, it's like, if you don't want to talk about the conversation, have the conversation, or if the conversation makes, you can automatically go to, oh, feminism, it's white, and and everything else gets thrown away from, where it's like, I don't have to call myself a I could vow today to never call myself a feminist again in life. I would still care about the same things I care about. I would still make the same arguments around patriarchy that I make. I can call myself a Bambaraist for the rest of my life, but I'd still be pulling from Black feminist thought. Like it's, and I would pull from African womanist thought, and I would pull from women who didn't identify as such. Like, so I just think we get so, we're very quick to throw that title on a woman to dismiss what she's talking about or the points that are made. And I just think it's irresponsible. But yeah, so I just think it's what I'm looking for is a combination of all of those things. We can have the cultural. I'm a cultural worker, so I like I love the juju. I love it all. So, and I'm trying to get back to that because I had to separate myself a lot from that, because I know when I first got into, African spirituality, even wearing a crystal, it was all from an indoctrinated point of capitalism. I was heavily indoctrinated. So even my spiritual approach, even though I said I practiced African spirituality, I still was looking at it through capitalist lens. So I had to step away because I'm like, I don't even know what to talk to my ancestors about other than, how I'm gonna get this money. And so I had to step away from that, and I'm not saying, I understand like, that's not the same thing, but you get what I'm saying? It was very much of like my ancestors reward me through money. I'm not looking at the rewards, through mental strength to do this work, to do radical work, to fight for liberation. I'm not looking at any of those things. I'm only looking at it through the Eurocentric framework that I was indoctrinated with. So I just think when we jump into these African-centered thought without having a process to decolonize, we end up repeating the same patterns, but in African garb. I've seen it in lifetime. I've done it many times myself. And I'm saying there's some people that's already doing this work that I'm gonna look, further into. I I mean, I don't, have to, harp too much on it. I think y'all kind of get the point of where I was going. I did want to go into some bonus fun stuff because what I will say, because like I said, I love the juju and I love all these things as well. And I think it kind of brought me back to a place of like, well, how could I connect these things? I think that's what Nah Dove kind of challenged me to do with African womanism. Because I mean, Ma'at is cool, but we also have the Yoruba tradition of Ifa. And I have always connected with the goddess, the Orisha, Oya. And I've always known Oya to be a protector of women. A lot of people, I feel like in a lot of things from the books I've read of Oya, if you look at what's in writing about what Oya is and what she's symbolic of, it's very feminist. Like, it's never gonna say that, but it's a very feminist framing. And so I think when we talk about trying to connect back to pre-colonial thought, I think there's cool things about Oya that I think encouraged me as a revolutionary, where she's the goddess of the storm. Her relationship with Shango, I think, is something we can look at, because it is Ma'at, but it leaves room for her, like for her to be the leader sometimes. Like it leaves room for like just that diversity of like, it's not always we balance each other out. I have this feminine energy and woos, and he has this masculine, and we balance. Sometimes it's, hey, I'm taking the lead. Hey, I'm the storm, and he's following suit. And I just think that fluidity is something with us as African people that we've like abandoned, or that becomes demonized. And so I think, yeah, that's a cool part about Oya that I thought about once I got into this, is that she speaks for the radical Black woman. She speaks for the warrior Black woman, the Black woman that doesn't fit into this dimsel feminine box that, society wants to put Black women in, that you can be all these things and it still be centered in your African roots. And so I thought that was cool. One of the things that, and I think that's the thing. I think one of the biggest things and why I feel like it could connect to Bambaraism is because I feel like Oya is a symbol of death as well. Like, so she governs death, and she does not fear it. She presides over it, and I think that is the spirit of I think me and a lot of women like me, of like, we have to freaking kill these things that live within us. We have to kill this indoctrination of patriarchy, this indoctrination of misogyny, misogynoir, of capitalism, all these things. There has to be framework to kill these things off before a new system, a new thing can emerge. And so, like I said, I feel like African womanism can land in some sort of result. I think Oya's cosmology as the storm itself gives opportunity for it to be worked through and torn down. It gives opportunity of accountability. It gives opportunity for us to look at relationships as not always the woman submitting to the man. And even that, we've seen that so much within our communities, and a lot of people will argue, well, a lot of the women are the leaders in the center and stuff, but it still has been demonized. That's the thing; it still could be demonized, or a lot of us still hold the energy that shouldn't be. Like, my mama held it down in the house, but that was wrong, as opposed to like, no, like being like, we honor that energy, that warrior energy that a lot of us have. So. Yeah, so I'll stop here. I know I went over time, but I'm comfortable going over time as a whole with this episode. But yeah, so that kind of concludes. Yeah, I think there's nothing else. So yeah, I'll stop.
All right. So where do you want to go next? Do you want to start with us, maybe ask us some questions, or how would you like the next transition to go?
Just I guess clarifying questions or first thoughts and things.
Yeah, I got a clarifying question. First, I want to say good job. Thank you for putting that together. You did a really good job. And yeah, I would love to see like a lot more. I read Weems. She's an elder, so she's not like a young person at all.
Yeah.
And I kind of remember the timing that she wrote it, where she was arguing all those other things. So I'll be interested to go into that more soon with you. But I kind of want you to kind of go back to a point you made and see if you can, because I also watch the episode when I think you told me about the episode and when you went to Dennis' show and you was in the comments and kind of that back and forth y'all were having. And then in general, I've seen, people's conversations within the last few weeks, even my conversations. So my question, black women have been killed by their black partners at a horrible, catastrophic rate, even before whoever the Russell lady coined the term femicide in 76. And in this conversation, if you could kind of drive home the point that whether you accept this term or not, what I'm communicating to you is this thing. And I want you to hear this thing and do something about this thing that I'm telling you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, you're exactly right. Before the term was created, it was happening, and it was always happening because of multiple things. It was never just a black men cooked something up and decided to target black women. So it's always been political structure as to how we get into these situations. And whether you want to accept that terminology or not, I think we should focus so much more on what is happening and how do we culturally transform the idea of roles and the culture around roles and gender that we create day to day, whether it's within our homes, our churches, or our personal organizations, our friendship groups, whatever you're part of. I think men and women have to have a commitment to creating a culture that isn't so rigid on these Eurocentric gender roles and ideas of what a man and woman has to be, because that is a part of it. Is it going to stop that from happening overall? I am never stating that. I'm not naive enough to believe that. But I don't think that, I just think it's going to get harder and harder for us to come together.
Yusef, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Okay. I think Cherie internet went out for a little bit. But yeah, I know she's coming back, but anything that you want to share or
I commend her for putting it together. It's not easy by no means, and in the time manner that she did it, so I salute her. I'm still, it was a lot to process, from femicide to the different examples of feminist thought, black feminist thought in particular. Like even the term black feminist thought, if I'm not mistaken, I think Patricia Hill Collins is the one coined that. And so
Hit me. They was trying to stop me. It was they was trying to get me. They said, "Damn you, black woman." I don't know what that was, but I apologize.
No, I didn't mean to do that. I was trying to bring you back on. Yusef was saying something, and then when you came back on, I didn't know you was talking. I mean, I didn't know you was going to be talking because I was hearing him talking. Then I tried to mute you just now, and I missed and took you off.
Oh, okay.
But we was waiting for you to come back.
I'm sorry. I'm on my work computer, y'all. I don't switch computers. I'm lazy, and it's probably not good because I don't. Sometimes this computer just be having its moments. But yes.
So Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I forgot exactly where I was, but all I was trying to say was that we cannot address these things as far as build the communities that we want to build organizationally if we don't interrogate or have any sort of framework to interrogate these structures and looking at these structures and how it plays out between men and women is just one part of it. It all impacts how men interact with other men. It all impacts, male power within these organizations and how that impacts other men. And so I guess, yeah, I might have got a little lost in my thoughts, but I feel like that's what I'm trying to say is that all of this, and that's what I was even talking to Yusef about, is like, I feel like I don't even know sometimes if people are so used to like just hating or demonizing feminism. It's like people don't even sometimes, I think, take the time to think that like the reason why male abuse isn't taken seriously is a product of patriarchy and misogyny as well, because it's looked at as like women are weaker, women are weak and not powerful. So if one is hitting you, you shouldn't even acknowledge it as abuse or a real thing, because you should just be able to take it in a sense because you're a man. And so and that sort of thinking stops men from even realizing that they're abused. And so it's not just to simply, like, when we empower women and cancel out patriarchy, we empower all of us. We empower men to be like, all right, you're not going to be smacking me, I'm going to leave. Like, that's not, I can't just look at that as I'm the guy and I take that. It's so many things. Like, and I say this because I think I had the funniest conversation years ago where like this guy was so hot. He's like, y'all women get so mad. Y'all talk about all the stuff that y'all go through and the scrutiny y'all face for, but y'all don't even like short men. Why y'all so mean to short men? And I was like, the idea of not wanting short men comes from patriarchy too. The idea, because if he's supposed to protect you and provide and be all this stuff and be the defender of you, if that's your politic, you're gonna want the biggest, tallest guy. Like, but he was like, huh? Like, what? Because he just couldn't wrap his. He's like, but no, this is what women are, and they're supporting patriarchy too. And so I just think, the more we can just be open to these conversations before just being like, because a thing is still a thing. And I think Kwame Ture always spoke so clearly about that when he talked about gravity would be gravity, whether we called it gravity or not. And so, yeah, so sorry. But yeah.
Good job putting this together in a short amount of time. A lot of information to process. You kind of like took us through the galaxy and stuff. For me, I'm still centered on the origin of this, where it was born out of the murdering of Black women. Unfortunately, we've seen this cross different generations, and Black people in general. Like, I don't like Black people. We get killed every day in some form or some fashion. And in particular, for this conversation, lately it was being framed, particular Black men killing Black women, and folks was framing and saying like, well, no, let's rethink that. Is this mental illness, or is it just violence? And this is where I was hearing in my sphere of the atmosphere, so to speak. And then you introduced this conversation, and so like the term femicide, I still don't necessarily, I get it, but don't get it per se. And something still process. But also thinking about Dr. Bobby E. Wright, where he said like we can't continue to use white theories to define Black phenomena. Could it be a starting point? Absolutely, but can it be absolute? That's the question mark. And then as recently I said, like, even not only Black phenomena, but all marginalized people using those. But then also, Dr. Bobby E. Wright introduced the word Femicide, and which means the deliberate destruction of a group of people's mind, which contributes to how we function with and within our communities as oppressed people. Like you talked about culture, like you said, I forgot you word, like it's in the culture. Like for me, I cringe when I hear the word culture, because in true reality, we don't have a culture. Like people say hip hop is our culture. Like if hip hop is our culture, then we're doomed, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this dichotomy between African and Black. I think they're interchangeable, but also they don't necessarily mean the same thing either, in the sense of Black is a political expression of our social and political development, not only here in America, but in the diaspora, and even to some degree in Africa, that we identify as Black as a result of challenging white hegemony to some degree. And then Africa, or African, could be the culture, but as you laid out, like most of us are trying to go back to pre-Africa, which could never absolutely happen. As you shared with me and Geechee, Dr. Dennis, commentary, his pieces, and one thing that he said that really stuck out to me, like when we uphold white patriarchy in terms of criticizing, and he was like, we got to also talk about white matriarchy. And when he said, like, damn, that he is true, because of like that both systems are feeding off each other. And so, like, let me state loudly, like when I hear feminism, whether you agree or disagree, like for me, it's fundamentally recognizing that women in general in this society are fucked over, are exploited in some form or some fashion. So from that definition, in my own mind, I rock with feminism, just from that definition of knowing that women get fucked over. Now, the methodology of it, or because there's different ways of it, and I think starting from that conversation allows us, bring us back within the framework of moving that. Because so to your point, like I went back when we watched Ida B. Wells the other day, a documentary. So it was her best friend who was lynched.
Oh, okay, got you. Yeah, I was like, you brought it up and I wrote it down, and I was like, I need that story again. Thank you.
Yeah, her best friend is lynched, which is a man, and then she begins to create this crusade.
Mm-hmm.
And and I've said this publicly, like, and we've always fought for each other, but because of how we interpret our struggle through the lens of, or the experience of Black men, by default, we've always put Black men to the forefront. We could debate that, why, and whatever. But on the same token, quietly, we have done that for Black women, not loudly. When you think back historically, there's never been a movement that was born to organize around the raping of Black women, not loudly as the Western, right? Quietly it probably was, but loudly it never emerged to the surface. But also, like one of my professors told me when I was in school, like sometimes we can't take today's lesson and apply it to the past and change the past. That's the purpose of learning from the past. Because again, the analysis that we have now is really about the new information that we have now. So again, like even our show and where we are today, Geechee and I, we started it and we're discussing, like, we have two Black men. Hey, what about we bring on someone else, particularly a woman? And this is how you get introduced into the show. Because for me, thinking of like the Black Panther Party, right? And most of our organizations founded by men. And was they intentionally being sexist or misogynistic? Probably not. But by default, they was, because again, you're not including the other part of our community. But I learned from that experience to want to make sure that this doesn't happen, anything that I'm part of. So that's just like framing and starting to continue to process this, the whole show and the whole conversation.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I get what Yusef is kind of pointing out when I think we're talking about, there is a culture that we have that I don't really think is ours. And then I think sometimes in this country, and I think as a cultural worker, I think, like I said, I do kind of look at it as like my spiritual calling to, like, do my best to create a culture that cultivates change, because I think, that internal change within certain people then can steer towards collective change, towards a group of people. The specific people I'm talking about is Black people, and like I said, in the way you describe Black is, I definitely align with. So yeah, so I think, like I said, when we come to culture, I think it's, that work of trying to create a culture that goes against the very culture that we've kind of been, indoctrinated with. And even from that indoctrinated culture, we made our own culture that looked like our own, but still has a lot of the indoctrination of it. It still is very, white in the bottom, may look like, this rap, and may look like Kendrick at the Super Bowl, but underneath it is all this other stuff. So it's like, so I think as a cultural worker, I think, when I think about culture and its impact, I have to think, practical, immediate, because I know I may not ever be this, as Jared Ball says, you can't be rich, famous, and revolutionary, whatever. So I may not ever be this big star that everybody knows, but like within the spaces that I am in, and the power that I do have, whether it be on YouTube, like how do I create this culture around these conversations and challenging these things within myself? And it's not easy, so yeah.
So I've been doing my best to like really listen. Shout out to YouTube, Cherie, but I'm about to say all of the African women that I've known, how, and they try to coach me into how I could show up differently. So I've been trying to like really listen to what people are saying and be like, because I know it, like when you listen, and then while you listening, you critiquing while you listening, you're gonna respond. And you might not even be hearing everything, but when you listen, you can be like, you can take time to actually like, okay, if you script down all the words and all of the concept and all the theories and all of whatever, like what are they saying? And so I've been trying to do that. And while doing that, when replaying our conversation, listening to how Dennis exchanged, me and Lorick talk as well. And then on top of that, we in this circle, we all know each other, right? You don't know Dennis, but I know Dennis. Like me and Dennis used to have struggles in Baltimore for like 6-7 years. And, they even claimed that they ran me out of Baltimore because, I was giving them Jared's book, and they were struggling with that book and they was mad. So like, I know the dude, and I know we have like difference of views. I remember being on the phone with him arguing for like almost 2 hours over, I can't remember the word terminology. I don't even remember. So yeah, I'm like trying to listen to what everybody's saying. I really hear like multiple different conversations, and I want to try to see if I can like share with you, even in Yusef's response just now. I feel like what you present, what you said, and what Yusef was responding to, they all have their like, they exist somewhere, but sometimes they exist in separate spaces. So I'll give you another example. I didn't study Weems like that, but I know Weems. I thought I knew Weems enough. So when I heard you make claim, when I heard you said something about like African womanists don't center women, and I'm Africana, right? And I'm like, what? How could? And I'm like thinking, and we can argue, and we can go into the book that you quoted. We can go to that book and like struggle through what you read, what I read, whatever. None of that's gonna really matter if I can't say like, yo, there's a fucking problem with black men or black whoever killing black women. Like it's a big enough problem for us to fucking do something, or even to name it and say that was the fuck is happening. Those are two different conversations. One is about like theory and what this means and whatever, and the other one is like, no, like if you call it womanism, you call it this with it, whatever, like. And when I bring this to you, are you gonna say, yeah, I mean, that's a problem and stuff, but like that shit ain't like, we ain't got time for that shit right now. We gotta do some other shit. Like, is that like? So I feel like multiple people just having multiple different conversations, and nobody. I don't even know if we really hearing each other. People arguing, and there's like, cause even with even with like when I told you I responded, I'm like, well, if you tell me this, like, and we all talking about the word, and I was like, well, this mean and my uncle and my like I'm just trying to figure out. We're not having the same conversation at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So like, yeah, I just wonder if you have some thoughts around that. And again, even with the difference of conversations, sometimes we say something and I might read an assumption, right? So when you was talking, you said something like, oh, well, men, they jump over to African womanism. And it's almost like a man is making a conscious effort to not be accountable. So he pick up whole other ideologies. Or it's like that's his learning journey. All of us have a learning journey, and like, remember when you was limited, was you intentionally trying to be limited?
Yeah, so like, no, completely. I get that. It's like, yeah, you jump into certain things, and I guess the way I speak sometimes. I mean, I don't know. I think and that's something that I think I have to work on, because sometimes I say, like, in my mind, I think sometimes. And not to get too much in my neurodivergency, but I just feel like sometimes I look at highlight things, like even when like we talking about femicide, I'm thinking Black women killed, and like my brain isn't sit with femicide and da. So sometimes even when I'm speaking, like I'm like some stuff is because I'm thinking is like a filler word because I'm thinking of a larger thing. Or so I'm saying jump, but it could be transition. It could be, but what you're hearing is jump. That sounds intentional, but I'm just like, I'm trying to say people are going here from there, and that is not good. Whether intentional, unintentional, the way I first found out about, African spirituality and I just jumped into all of this stuff before even sitting with like, think my personal indoctrination or in America or any of those things or before addressing capitalism or any of those other things. I was like, well, this is this, and I know about this now, and y'all over there with Christianity, and I got this now, so I know something. And so, so I understand, like, it is all definitely a process. I just think, like I said, too, these conversations is so much too of like language, that I think has to somewhat be and then it's from men and women too, like because I think I hear trigger words, instead of like and sometimes they're not even as focused on that word, but that it's like, oh, you said that, it was but you were really just trying to get to this, but like so that can it can come up with conversation. So I think it's like a constant commitment to, like I said, transformation was something that I was really sitting with when I stayed up super late reviewing this and was thinking about, the Oya part. I was like, it's the transition and the transformation, and, all of these arguments, I feel like kind of, and misunderstandings happen when it's like, conclusion is the thing, and it's not like transformation, and I think it's like, and so I think, like I said, we hear things and we just automatically, our mind, not intentionally, but it just goes into conclusion. We don't, like, how do you it's like kind of like when you're first trying to talk to somebody about Black capitalism and they're like deeply offended when you start to tell them like Black people ain't got no money, Black people poor, and they're like, well, wait, no, this Black person got money, this Black, like, what you mean? They start to be like, like, because they think you're downing them or down in the race by being like, we don't have no real money or whatever, like, and they automatically kind of go into that before it's even like, because they take it as the conclusion of yours by saying I don't have any money, you're saying that like I'm, not working hard or inherently, not measuring up, or it just becomes all these other things where there's not like a pause of like, just sit with that. Sit with, you don't own the means of production. Sit, like, you get what I'm saying? But I understand, because when I first hear it's like, well, dang, they trying to put us down. I know some people that got a just nice job and got, you get what I'm saying? But so it's similar to that,
Yeah, I know. I'll let Yusef go. I think even to that point, right? So let's give it that point, and it's ironic, right? So you talked about the buying power argument. That's the argument again. We had me, Dennis, Jabari, Brother Heber, Jared. Like, the argument was aggressive, right? But the point, right? What we normally say is black people ain't got no money, and then they be like they do their rebuttals. In the spirit of dialectical, we're not actually being dialectical when we say black people don't have any money.
Yeah.
And not only is that, they responding to, nigga, I know black people got money. Like yo just dropped the bird and blah blah blah. And they know black people got money because they got money and they got a big ass grant. They got a house. And so they might can't do certain things with the money, and there might be limitations, but you didn't say that. You said black people ain't got no money, and that's what they responded to.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Yusef.
I agree. That's good. That's a good point, Geechee.
Well, to piggyback off that conversation, I'm glad you acknowledged the lack of dialect that we approach our conversation with, and what I interpret that is we're talking to people when we're interjecting, and this is not an academic term, when we're interjecting struggle language, revolutionary language, Black national language, which does not translate to everyday Black people. So this leads to the conflict. So I think even with this the context of what you presented, Cherie, and the overall is there's different levels of overstanding that we exist at, which leads to a lot of the conflict, the triggering, the gender wars, et cetera, which prevents folks from sitting with things to be able to see. Because ultimately, like you said at some point in the presentation, that the ultimate goal is to be a better human being. Like how to, and like so Che Guevara said, like, to create a new society, you have to create new human beings, and every new human being that we create is building the new society. And so getting to the core as Black folks, New African people who are oppressed in this country, as each household, each block, that we able to build the ability to address those dynamics. Because again, like, when we talked off air, like Geechee put the mirror and said, which I had to remind myself, I learned gender oppression, gender dynamics at home. I didn't know that's what I was learning, but that's what I learned, right? But even learning, and now in my conscious understanding, like the context to, Black men who my mother dated came home, taking their frustration out on her. To your point, it wasn't personal, but who else do I take it out on? And not realizing because I see her weaker or whatever, there's a condition, right? And then to your point, there's ultimately there's a response. And one of those responses, at one point, my mother grabbed a shotgun and shot the shit out the motherfucker. And fortunately, she didn't get incarcerated, but like that's the dichotomy on both sides. And I think, like, for me in this conversation, how do we put that in these two behaviors? And that they shouldn't compete with each other, because ultimately, like, to the term Black, when I talked off air about Blackhood, right? To be my best self, I had to analyze myself in relationship to you and vice versa. Because ultimately, to Brother Dennis, which I adhere to an African way of thinking, but to get to an African way of thinking, I first had to understand my African self, to understand your African self, and seeing where we complement each other and where it's antagonistic. But some of the antagonistic is not natural; it's unnatural, and we have not realized and examined the unnatural that contributes to what you laid out, the femicide and vice versa. But it's all tied to our oppression. And so some of us here, but most of us don't even understand that we're oppressed to be even comprehend the conversation, unfortunately.
So back to that Bambara quote about how she said the brothers have to develop something and the sisters have to develop something on their way to developing appropriate response to both of their conditions. So sometimes I feel like we're in the right rooms. However the conversations emerge, that's just where the fuck we go. That's what's gonna happen. We're gonna struggle. We're gonna get there. But then at the same time, I would say, like, sometimes we just need better facilitators in different rooms, right? So certain conversations need to be happening in this room, and the other conversation happening in this room. So us as people are involved, especially, let's say, for instance, if this was you're presenting, how I could be as a comrade is making sure the stuff that I did after all of those conflict happened, I could have had that brain on where I'm listening to people, what they're saying. And then, for instance, if you're presenting and somebody's getting off of the topic, I can redirect this person and be like, well, this is at the root, right? Because again, even as we think about African Center, which the best example is this one. Bob Amos Wilson, who all of us love, right? And we always have this struggle in Baltimore with Jabari and all the rest of them. We always had this struggle. People know me as Larry Shaw. Oh, you need an African name. Or this person need an African name. No, you need to change. You need to change your African name. And everybody used to have all this talk around like, and we had an African and Mama Marimba Ani, who I know personally. And I'm like, yes, have an African sound concept. So I use Utamawazo, Utamaroho, Asili, right? Because it does give me a framework to like explain.
Concepts or names?
Huh?
What you just named, was those concepts or names?
Those are concepts, right? So the Asili is like the culture, the germinating seed. And I ain't gonna go through all of them, but they all have like concept, and it's easy when I think about it. It's easy to explain things in that way. Like all cultures do these things, and you get to break down culture. But no matter what happens with these names and whatever, Baba Amos, after every lecture, and he recorded it on books, and you can see the audio after every lecture. And some people cut it off. Somebody cut it off or whatever. He let people ask him Q&A, and somebody was kind of pushing him. Was like, "Well, you talk about this other African shit. Why you ain't got your African name?" He was like, "Well, I mean, intellectually, I'm struggling with that. I mean, but like at the end of the day, like you can have African name, you don't have power. You can't do shit with the African name. So like." I mean, and there's going to be people who are getting more work done without an African name than you do with your African name. And Mobutu got an African name. Like, so it's like looking at the concrete thing. I wonder if Cherie, if you can share. Again, we're all in this big struggle that we're talking about, and we all trying to develop frameworks so that we can analyze it and use those frameworks to go into practical skills and build organizations to achieve. We all trying to do this, so we said, right? In that thing, we all trying to fight on things like this is more important. I think we need to worry about the seeds and eating seedless watermelons and shit. I think, and somebody saying, well, we need to take a look at this because Black women are not like. What is being said that you have heard? You've just been saying this. And people are starting conversations about something else, or might be attacking you. Even if you can't explain femicide at the beginning, what is being said about what's happening to Black women, and then your response to the person, and now what are you going to do about it, or what is there to argue about? Does that make sense? And you muted.
Let me make sure I understand the question. So you're saying, what do I think is being said when Black women bring up femicide, and what do I think is the response that Black women are responding to, in a sense? Is that what you're saying?
So there was this big response about it, and you was like, you don't really know the definition, then you don't need to know the definition or whatever to know that you're bringing up this thing is happening. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, Black women are being femicide, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And you're bringing that to the person's attention because you want them to hear or do what? Mm-hmm. And for some reason, they're having a whole nother conversation.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things, right? Where it's like, after hearing Dr. Dennis, like, even for example, hearing him speak, like, I don't think he's somebody that, is intentionally trying to do anything bad. But I think, like I said, I think there's a missing, because I think when you have these different frameworks that push back on the word feminism, because it's like, we need something African feminist, we need something that's African and not feminist and it's a white word and you can't have that without its white roots. I think when you go there, instead of like identifying the problem or thinking about the issue first, you misunderstand. Like you misunderstand what the person is even trying to get to because you're so used to like hearing that word as like a trigger or like or associating it with somebody that is trying to specifically I guess categorize a negative thing on, because I think even that was brought up in one of his episodes of like it's bringing a sweep to Black men, or it's making a general statement about Black men. In a sense, when it's like femicide is about black femicide is about Black women, and so it's like there's nothing in there that is specifically like you get like it's like. It is a framework that is about something that Black women are experiencing, and it's like it's the not even looking at it from that, but automatically going to how does this make Black men look, and I think, or how does this impact Black men? That's, like I said, that has been, and like I said, it's not saying that anybody's intentionally doing this. I think it's a gut reaction because you see the way that people are centering, Black men this, Black men that. You see that a lot. So I get that. I hear a lot of negative things about Black men too. I hear negative things about Black people. But like I said, it's like it's the missing of maybe us being more, and that's why I took the time to try to be more dialectical. This episode, because like I said, when I brought up that example earlier of like, you're literally just trying to be like, yo, look, some Black people have money, but overall, like, we don't have money. But like I said, they're hearing it as something else because you're not taking the time to really dialectically explain to them, like Black people are under harm first. And I think it's like a centering of the harm as opposed to like, then what does that mean? But that's a framing that Black women have seen or lived with for like so long at the most liberal mainstream scale. Like any time a Black man is in trouble, even if it's a Black man that doesn't give a F about the community, it's always what a certain Black woman has experienced is now painting a bad light on Black people and Black men by speaking like they were talking about Anita Hill and a lot of the stuff that I was bringing up. It's like, and the guy what's his face that did this isn't even somebody that was anchoring for the Black community. A similar thing with Bill Cosby. It's like people talk about the white way he harmed Black women too. And I'm bringing up popular figures, but it's like that is a constant. I just feel like people don't know what it's like and obviously like we have different experience, but I think what Black women are saying is that at any point, throughout this journey, it's like having to constantly see that, and like the amount of weight that it tells you as a Black woman and shame that it puts in you as a Black woman of like, if I experience some sort of harm from somebody that looks like me, like I know it's going to automatically be perceived as me putting down the race, me putting down another Black man, and we always have to kind of vice with like that sort of fight. And so then when it's even, and I think a lot of Black women just are desiring like we see you, we acknowledge you, we can have this conversation, but it's like before it's even that, it's you use this word, you didn't know this word, what is the root of this thing? And and I think it's not there's just, and like I said, when we talk about care, and I'm not gonna say I'm not always I'm not an angelic, caring, fairy person. I cuss niggas out and get upset, So it's like I criticize myself in this too. So I'm not saying that it's not within men and women to jump to like defense before like how do I approach this thing with care. But I just think I just think it's a lack of it's a hearing harm towards a particular thing and the intentional or unintentional jump to how does this now harm me and my image, that is just it's harmful, and it puts Black women in a very icky position of like you know, yeah, I don't know. I'm still working on how to talk about these things myself. I don't know if I got repetitive, but sorry if I did. Yeah.
That's good. Yusef, you got anything? I know we're about to wrap.
Yeah. I got 2 points. What you was talking about, like the and it's actually Dr. Amos Wilson, his book, what's it called? The Falsification
of
the African Conscience, right? You was kind of like, I think we as oppressed people, we get into extremes. And it's easy to do that. Like, so they say, like, when you first gain knowledge, you go through that rage, that mad stage. And, you know, you look at Malcolm X, what the beauty of him is his continued growth, his continued evolution of outgrowing the Nation of Islam and began to develop a nationalist revolutionary perspective. But I think we don't look at particular New African people in America. Our social and political development is uniquely different, and wherever we find African people is uniquely different to that demographic, right? And there was this article or this I don't know if it was excerpt or something that Alice Walker wrote, and it's like it's a fictional piece, and where this Black woman and her boyfriend tends the barbecue, and she's no longer Jane, he's no longer Joe, it's Abdullah and Queen Latifah, right? And she's having a dialogue with her mother, and her mother like, okay, I can respect your name, but, and she's like, I don't have that white person name. She's like, well, that white person name, no, I named you Sue, Sue after your grandmother. But because we have not learned how to absorb our lineage here, our struggle is still diluted because it's still intertwined with white oppression, what makes us devalue who we are. But it's in that dichotomy, right, that we have to go back to traditional African names. And I'm not saying it's like we shouldn't. I think we should, but also there's an opportunity for something new. So like my middle name is Bunchy. It's not an African name by no means, but Bunchy Carter created an African experience on this continent that's worth honoring, worth embracing. But also when you think about particular, and you kind of alluded to your point, Cherie, in your presentation, like when we try to become this new human being, we want the most diabolical, the most incredible and scary name that's just gonna, when you hear my name, it's gonna make motherfuckers stop in their block. But that's that patriarchal thing that we're trying to hold on to instead of having my name Quasi, I'm born on Thursday. That's dull than the motherfucking versus my name Yusef, and I'm like Hannibal. I'm the reincarnation of Hannibal. I'm about to ride the elephants and kill all white people. And that, we're searching for this affirmation beyond just being our human selves, and that could lead to doing some very dominant, extreme, beautiful things. And this is the part of the process of still going through these type of conversations. Like even I may not still struggle understand with Femicide, but it doesn't dispute like the essence of your point is I'm totally opposition of the harm of Black women, the harm of Black people in general. And I think like you and Dr. Dennis, y'all got in the same room. Y'all agree on that. Like you both want to support and protect Black people. And I'm saying, like, and this is what Geechee always trying to remind us of. This is the ideological struggle, but it gets trapped into other things that we miss the ideological struggle. And they're healthy discussion. They can get intense. The hood Cherie can come out and all that. Calling motherfucking idiots and little boys.
I feel like because you can't really curse on the stuff. I said some other stuff, but then it wasn't showing up. So I was like, what else can I put?
That's funny.
But
then take Dr. Dennis, what he say, man, I'm gonna take the heel route. That was so funny hearing you say it. But I mean, I just want to like frame that for us. This is a great conversation overall, but I think there's levels, and I think just moving forward as we explore more topics, the ability to break stuff down, and the dialectical aspect of academia, revolutionary jargon, and just basic terminology every day. Like having, and I think that's the uniqueness of our show and what we're doing, what we're presenting. We have the ability to intertwine all those verses where for some folks are top heavy in one or the other.
Yeah. No, it's so funny. I just because I was literally just having this conversation with my cousin a couple of weeks ago. Both of my cousins that are my age, all my cousins are older than me, but so he's older. And my cousins that are his sons that are closer to my age, a little younger than me, they're, Kari and Kofi. And he was talking about how he just discovered, like, his name is Earl. And he didn't realize that, like, his dad, like, his granddad is, like, because my granddad's name was Earl. And then also his dad on his father's side, he had just found out was Earl. And he kind of was like, dang, I feel bad because, like, I didn't even give that thought. And, now there's no Earl or whatever to, like, give to them. He was like, what was I thinking? I was like, you was thinking, what's the hottest African name I can give my son? He was like, that's exactly what I was thinking. But I think, yeah, we don't take the time to think about that. Like, even my name, Cherie Danielle, like, now I have, like, deep meaning and stuff to it, and why I probably would keep it, just to honor the fact that my parents named me after one of the most beautiful songs ever written. So I'll probably always keep my name. But my last name, I go by my middle name because I thought my last name was hard to pronounce, and it was so easy for me to toss it away. Like, it's that, like, kind of indoctrination. Like, my last name is hard to pronounce. I want to be an actress. Danielle flows better. It's more marketable. So I'll keep it that way. And then my dad is just always like, yeah, your last name bites with. Anytime he look at anything, like, but that's your last name. So, I don't know. So it's just funny, like, when we talk about names and meaning and, like, intentionality. So I just thought, all of that was interesting to add to that. But, yeah. So
I only mention that because of, again, it goes back to the frameworks, right? And so I'm curious, Cherie, and again, I know we rapping. When you're having that conversations with people and you're going back for words and terminology, and it's like, yo, I reject that framing because I believe that thing mean like side, and side is like genocide. And then no, well, you talk about. Do you ever stop that and be like, okay, what I'm saying is, Black women are being murdered by their, like? Do you ever go like concretely like that? And then in saying that, then your question to them is. Because you're telling them this online, you're telling them this maybe at your home or whatever. You're telling them this, and then to do what?
I mean, like I said, bombarism, and that's why I feel like I want to struggle around that, because it calls for, like, the action and it understands the limitations of the actions, And that's what I think with all of this. We have to be honest about the framing and what we can do with all this indoctrination in the society and the larger systems that we live in, and what we have to actually build towards. And, like, understanding I'm not asking you Black men to go out there and unitedly stand and patriarchy now ends, and we held hands and stood up in front of the White House or whatever. And it's like, that's just not, no. It's like, I'm just, saying it starts with an examination of, the family, organizational, church groups, and the nature that we're, the nature around us that we do have some level of control over. And being able to openly say this, even if you don't want to call it femicide or whatever, even the word is just like, it don't sound natural me saying that. Like, I just, we gotta stop killing these Black women. Stop killing hoes. Even if that's where you at. No, that's sorry. Even if that's where you at, but just like something of like, nah, it's not, and I'm sorry, y'all, I'm silly, but, people don't take that. But if I'm like, stop, just that's where it starts at. And that's what I'm getting to. As far as my response, I don't know. I come from an emotional place, and I'm a dramatic ass woman. So I'm going to always go to, you don't care about my life and want me to die. But I'm saying I'm working on trying not to, like, go there. Last week I had a slip up, but, I'm trying to, like, not always go there and, like, go to, okay, I'm pretty sure, trying to give people the benefit of that. And I think sometimes, like I said, for me, I felt like I was being attacked by, like, multiple people. And then I'm taking in me being attacked by the multiple people. Then I'm always seeing all these other conversations outside of people speaking to me of just like, just feeling like, like, because I feel that pain regardless of how liberal it is. Like, I know what Meg Thee Stallion does shouldn't really affect me, but I still feel that pain of like, people are literally making fun of, this woman that already experienced physical harm from a man publicly, are laughing at her getting broken up with. Like, no, it's not my political framing, but it's like, I feel that. I'm feeling the femicide, and then I'm also seeing like, so it's a collective feelings. And so when you hear, so then all of a sudden when it feels like it comes towards you, and it feels like it's kind of like unprecedented, because it's just kind of like, dang, I've still talked about a lot of it in very like good framing, especially in framing that I thought was giving Black men the benefit of the doubt, where it's like, because I see the reactionary stuff of like, we need to leave them, get rid of them altogether. It just kind of made me be like, well, dang, here I was trying to balance things out and be like, but even me trying to do that, it felt like, no, you're too. And it's like, if I'm literally on a platform saying women contribute to it too, there's stuff that we slip up on, culturally, and there's ways that we don't understand because and that was another thing. And I'm sorry, I know I'm going on, but I had to stop and sit with the fact that when I was thinking about how patriarchy conditionally benefits Black men, I had to stop and think about how it conditionally benefits women too. Because that is also when we're thinking about dialectically, like, no, patriarchy doesn't benefit women on a large scale, but it does have conditional benefits. And these conditional benefits are a part of what keeps this culture alive. Because I think, women can overlook the fact that they conditionally benefit from a system that is meant to harm them as well. Like, it's meant to harm me, but I can still conditionally benefit from patriarchy, the idea of being protected, the idea of being, taken care of financially, all this stuff. Even if I'm not buying into that, I still, have other women still have the autonomy to benefit from this specific system, and that can stop and that can keep us in alignment of supporting things that in long term harm us. So it's like the same thing. So I think I'm sorry, I don't went all off, but I caught myself because I'm saying that I think I'm sitting with how I respond to these things in live time, and I'm still working on, I guess, like being an empath, and like, even though I try to be, radical and not feed into like group think, like it can still these things can still like impact me when they're paired with certain types of harms. So I think with that, you have to actually take the time to think about the different, like when I was responding to people, I was looking at everybody. I'm like, I'm responding for y'all that's making fun of that girl for no reason. I'm responding to y'all that do want us killed. And I'm responding to y'all that might want some good, but you just not saying it the right way right now. So I'm pissed off at you too. So it's like, it just became one big thing. But I do think in hindsight, you have to take back and be like, okay, there are differences here. Like, like what you call it. I don't think, from what I know, Dr. Dennis ain't out here talking about some free Tory Lanez type. So it's like, there are differences, but I don't know. He might be. If he is, then, then never mind. Like I said, I didn't take it back for a reason. But anyway, yeah, so that's it.
I done told you, man. Once Jabari on this camera with who was with him? Sundiata and Ricardo. Sundiata work at another barbershop. And when they on this camera, after they start to say they do their podcast, Jabari said, them people over there, Barton and Bill and think tank. They talking about they be studying and whatever, but they don't know Fred Hampton was young. He died young. Fred Hampton, he would have matured and he would have been he would have support what we're doing. He probably would have support Black capitalism.
And then there lies the issue where it's like you do. There is that thing of like where I'm still trying to measure where it's like you break down things, or you attempt to have these like civil conversations, and then some people are going to still be at a certain place. People may know a little bit more, but then like I said, it still goes back to like, well, if I can't even talk to you about capitalism and socialism because you think socialism and communism is white. Like, I know I probably have no chances of me, like, talking about women's struggle and you like, trying to categorize it with some sort of white thing, like, and and like I said, and that's the thing where it gets down to, because it's like, is it, and that's always the question where I don't know. I have to judge the person in live time. Is it because it's white, or do you just not want to struggle around it, you know? And that's the question that you can't assume, but I do assume sometimes, but you have to kind of ask. And sometimes you end up leaning a certain way where it's like, bruh, like if it don't matter how black I try to lay this out for you, like you just want to be a capitalist. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like,
listen, man, I appreciate y'all for staying in. I think if you ask one of them brothers, like, listen, bro, do you want black women to die or not? Like, make up your mind and let's have a conversation. Manaya, anything y'all got before we wrap up?
No, I ain't got nothing. Good job, Cherie. Great job.
Thank you, y'all. I was nervous. Now I finally get to maybe rest because I ain't getting no real sleep.
You gonna take your ass to sleep.
Yeah, I'm like, I gotta get it together, y'all. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but thank you guys and thank you for allowing this. I know we were really trying to figure out what format we were gonna do and but I'm glad we let this happen, and hopefully I look forward to the upcoming episodes and us having more detailed stuff. I think in the end all of it led to good. I'm sorry some people got called names and whatnot, but it did in good conversation. My bad.
Are you apologizing, Dr. Dennis?
Yeah, I'm sorry for calling you the name Dr. Dennis.
The name Dr. Dennis.
I'm sorry.
Listen,
you're
that man, I think he already said it, and Dennis wouldn't want no apology. Like the man, this is work. He worked in the field of
and doing stuff. Yeah. So
I think he appreciated though. He appreciate the sentiments.
We appreciate it. Yeah. It just Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm gonna just leave it there.
I bet, man. Great show. Look for the next one as well, man. You guys have a blessed, wonderful evening.
Yeah, man. Yeah, peace.
Right.
Peace.
Only if you're willing to fight for it.
I don't think that's how it works. Wait, I can't do it. I can't go.
Black Liberation Media is a collective of Black and African organizers, journalists, academics, and media personalities serving Black and African masses seeking to further grow in their understanding of themselves, their histories, and the African world through entertainment and news. Please continue to like, subscribe, and donate to the channel so we can further serve you and liberate our people. You can also go to blkliberationmedia.org, get some merchandise, and also become a Patreon member and a member from the YouTube. Please do what you can, share, and show your love as we will show ours for you. Black Liberation Media.